Hi there, this video is about using Axis and Ohs with a plugin from Lorby's website called the ATC Bridge, the Air Traffic Control Bridge. And what it does is it allows you to bring the text that would normally appear in the drop-down menu that appears on the screen, and you can have it on your Stream Deck and the buttons are active. Which I like because it eliminates the need for keyboard and mouse when I'm flying. I'd prefer just to press buttons on the Stream Deck. This is a bit of an experiment. I've had some feedback from some people saying that they find the videos too long with too many concepts in them, and they prefer it to be broken up into shorter versions. Other people have said that they prefer it all in one video so they don't have to go hunting for part 1, part 2. So I'm going to try both. I'm going to record the separate videos and also stitch them together into one complete version. So if you're watching this, you're watching the complete version. And if you prefer it divided up into a number of smaller, shorter videos, then the links will be in the description below. Okay, let's see how this goes. Let's get started and have a quick look at where you go to do that. So the first thing is it's on Lorby's Axis and Ohs .com downloads page, and we're a fair way down the page here. We're about 3/4 of the way down the page. There it is, ATC Bridge. So download the zip file, and also download the manual as well. The zip file, the manual is included in the zip file, but I've brought it down separately. And what I've done is I have put that into, I've got a Stream Deck folder where I put things related to the Stream Deck, funnily enough. And there's a folder I've made called the ATC Bridge, and here's the zip. I just double click on that and extract all. And it's extracted it into a folder. And the sort of gotcha, the thing that catches people out here, is that by default it gives that folder the same name as the folder inside it. So we need to dig down one level, and that's the one that we're going to copy. So I'll copy that, and I'm going to paste that into my community folder. So all I've done is copied it straight to here, and that's it. That's the installation procedure. So I'm in my Cessna 172, and if I look at the toolbar now at the top, you'll see there's an extra icon being brought in. If you look at settings, you'll see that it's the Lorby ATC Bridge. It's just found it. The manual itself has quite a few tips on troubleshooting if it doesn't come up, but that's really now deactivated the menu we would normally use for ATC. We can't really use that anymore. We'd have to switch this off and switch that on. So it's there and it's active. You can deactivate it by clicking on it and click on it. I've discovered a couple of times that I need to do that at the beginning of a flight just to make sure it's working. So let's have a quick look at the manual, and you'll see what it actually does for us. So the first part is just giving a quick overview, and that's what we're going to try and achieve. And there's the troubleshooting section of it. But what I'm interested in here is what it actually provides for us. And what it does is it finds the various messages and presents them to you as an L variable, a local variable, which you can do things with. Just to show you what it looks like before we do any work with the Stream Deck. Obviously I've got Axis and Ohs running. And I run that as administrator before we start the flight simulator. That's normal practice. What I want to do is to watch the variables. So I've put in here and saved them. I did a save here. The list of variables that I'm going to want to keep an eye on. So it saves me typing them in each time. So if we look at the manual, I put in, just typed in all the different features that it's got. So there's the prompt, it tells us what frequency we're on. That is, the agent string is what the air traffic controller has said to you last. They haven't said anything yet, so that's empty. That's what you said to them, and obviously the ATIS string is there. Then we've got all the various options. It says here option N, so I've done in option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's what would normally appear when you start up and you haven't actually tuned into anything yet, so that they're available to you. And you need to set up, in fact that should be option 0 I think, rather than 10. I think I made a mistake on that one. Anyway, they're the various options so you can see what the text is going to look like. And what I've also done is I have built myself a little profile on my Stream Deck so that I can press the buttons to do option 1, option 2, option 3. So it would look like this. That one is 1. It just says it's a key event, ATC menu 1. You must put the value 1 here to make it active. That one is obviously going to be menu 2, menu 3. So I can press on the different menu buttons. Let's tidy up a little bit here. So you can see what happens to the variables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose option 2 and go for the ATIS, and you should see the ATIS string here. That's come up. So it tells you what I've and these are the options I've now got. I can tune to ground or tower. So there's the frequency I'm on, and again we haven't actually spoken to anybody, so there's nothing here. So if I go for option number 2, let's 1, let's tune for the ground. So it's saying choose an option for sure on ground, and let's request a taxi. So we'll that's me talking to them and them coming back to me. And now I could acknowledge that clearance. Okay, so that's how it works basically. It presents all those as variables that we can use, and so in the next video I will show you how you can use those in a Stream Deck using Axis and Ohs. So this is video 2, looking at how to use a multi-tile gauge on a Stream Deck so that I can display the air traffic control options and make these buttons active. So I'm in the cockpit of my C172, and as you saw in the previous video that we can use the bridge software, the ATC bridge, to bring the text strings out as local variables, LVARs, that we can use. We can use them on the Stream Deck. So if I bring my Stream Deck software in, what I want to do is to create a folder here to start with, and I'll call it my new ATC. And if we click on there, we're into a complete blank setup. It's not a profile, it's a folder, because it means I can go back quite easily where I came from. If I just press the back button there, that takes me back. So I'm pressing this button here, and we're back in this area here. So what I want to do is to use a multi-tile. The layout I'm going to use is I need 2 buttons for the text that comes up on the options. There's too much text to fit on one button, so I'm going to combine 2 buttons together. So I'll have option 1, option 2, option 3 here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 here. So I'm going to use these 2 together. So I need to use a multi-tile gauge. If I just slide that a bit. I'm using a multi-tile gauge. I don't need a title on it, but I'm just going to. I want to use the colours to distinguish the sort of groups of buttons together. So I'm going to use, say, a light blue as the background on here. Now I need to tell it how big this grid is going to be, and it's going to be 2 across and 1 down. And I need to look at this thing called a text definition. Let's try and get a bit more room for this. There we are. The significance of this will show much later on, but at the moment there's no definition for how my text is going to work, so I need to add a new text definition, and we need to give it a title. It doesn't matter what it's called particularly technically, but this is going to be for option 1 of from here. We'll be displaying option 1, so I call it opt1. Don't need to worry about the visibility at the moment. That's going to come again much later, but I do need to tell it what the variable is I'm looking for. So it's an lvar, and it's this one here, the AATC option 1. So it's case sensitive. You do have to get the case absolutely spot on, and it needs to have string after it, and it has to be again a comma, a space, capital S, string, otherwise it just doesn't work. Okay, so we're looking at that variable there. I'm going to align it to the left, and I want it to be able to split the text. If the text is too long, I want to be able to wrap it into a number of different lines, so we'll say yes. I've explored this, and for me the minimum width 18 works. We don't need to worry about this here. I want to shift it from the left hand side of the button just a little bit so it doesn't clash with the frame. So just going to put 5 pixels in, and fairly close to the top as well, so 20 pixels down. And I explored that for the font size 30 works quite well. Because we chose that light blue background, I'm going to choose black text for that, and we click on save here. So we've saved that profile of how we want the text to be displayed using a name opt1. Don't worry about exactly what it does at the moment, but there are, you can see that it's actually put the display in here, and it wants to wrap over onto the next button as well. I want to make it an active button, so I'm going to go into the button settings at the bottom here, and I want it to send this command. I want it to send the ACT menu option 1, and I have to put a 1 just to say that it's active, it's happening, and we'll submit that. So now in theory we've got a working button, but I want to use this second one here. So the best way to do that is to copy that and paste it in here, and you can see it's replicating tile 1. I need to tell it actually your tile 2, and now if I submit that, you can see it's showing me both bits of text. So if I press that option 1, it should tune me to shore and ground, so I should see these buttons change. So if I press this button on my stream deck, now I'm pressing this button here, you can see that the menus have changed. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do one down here. Let's do option number 2. So it's the same process. again, I'm going to choose the same colour blue. Just I have this column as blue and this one as, say, green or something, just to differentiate the buttons. Okay, so we're going through exactly the same process we did before. So we're starting afresh. It's a 2x1 grid, and we need to create a text definition for this button. So we're adding a new text definition, and this one will be opt2. Not worry about the visibility, but we do need to tell it which string to look for. So it's the ATC option 2. It's a string. I'm going to center it to have it centered this time, not over to the left, just to show the difference between them, so you can choose which you prefer. So again, we need to split the text, and again, the width is 18. You can play with these figures here and see what looks best for you. And this time we're going to have to shift it so it centers around 144. Each of these buttons is 144 pixels wide, so I want it to center around that point there. So we're shifting it there. Still about 20 from the top. Font size still 30. Black text. So we kept everything the same except that centering thing. So you can see it's begun to center that there. Let's make it a working button. So my button settings here. It's a K event. ATC menu underscore 2. Don't forget to tell it that it's going to happen. We use the 1 there to make it happen, and we'll submit that. Now I could do the same before. Copy it, paste it across. Make sure that's the active button that you're looking at there. That's position number 2, and that's what it looks like when it's centered. So it's whether you like it slammed to the left or centered, it's just sort of a design choice. I'm going to pause my recording now, and I will fill in all the rest of them and just show you what it looks like at the end. Okay, back again. So I have now put in all the different buttons. I've decided I quite like the centering, so I'm going to go with centered, I think. Just a quick recap of the general settings. So generally you pick a background color. You can have different background colors for the different buttons, that's not a problem. You need to tell it how big the grid's going to be. So I always do the first button first, and then make a copy, and then adjust here to say it's position number 2 for this one. Nothing to do with images, it's all to do with the text definitions. So I've got a different text definition for each of the pairs of buttons. It doesn't really carry over. You can't do copies and pastes and things like that from button to button. Just within the pairs it seems to work. That's the variable it's looking at to get the data, and I'm centered. I'm splitting the text so it can go on multiple lines. Minimum width seems to be 18. That seems to work with a font size of 30. So it's centered around the 144 pixels, and I've shifted it down about 20 pixels. I've chosen a black colour because it seems to stand out quite nicely against a pastel background. Click on save, and then the button setting is a key event, ACT menu, and then whichever button you're working on. I'm working on button 2 here. Don't forget to put the value 1 and submit. So that works. The one to watch out for here is this last one here. This is so this be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Button number 10. Option number 10, button number 10, but actually you're looking at option 0, it uses single digits for this, so that will be looking for string at 0. There isn't actually anything in string 10 for us to display at the moment. It really only comes up when you're looking for the nearest airports. So equally with the button setting for that one, you'll be looking at ATC menu 0, and there it is, it's working. So if I wanted to tune for the ATIS, I press on this button here and you should see the ATIS string come up in here. I've got my sound off at the moment, so you can't actually hear it announcing, but it's there. And if I tune to shore and ground now, so I'm going to be pressing on this button here. We're back in shore and ground again. Let's request a taxi. Let's do what we did before. So we'll and I can hear it talking to my headphones, but you won't be able to hear that at the moment. But now I've got the ability to acknowledge my taxi clearance, so you can see all the buttons are changing here. Let's acknowledge my taxi clearance. And the buttons have changed again. So that's it, that's how it works. Okay, so video number 3, we'll be looking at a technique to put the text for the ATIS and what the air traffic control actually says on these buttons here. So that'll be the content of video number 3. So this is part 3 of using the Axis and Ohs ATC bridge for the Stream Deck. And this one, again, you can use the multi-tile gauge, but this time so it can display both the ATIS and the air traffic controller's messages in the same area. So I'm still in the cockpit of the C172, and that's where we left the Stream Deck. So I've got this area here to put the longer messages in. So as before, we want to have a multi-tile gauge, and this time it's going to be 7 cells long, 7 buttons long by 1, and I'm not going to change the background, leave the background black, so we'll leave that as it was, but so I need to have a text definition. So we're going to add a new one, and we'll do the ATIS first. So we can call it whatever we like, but we'll sensibly call it the ATIS header. And the variable we're looking at is this one here, ATC ATIS. So we'll put that in as our variable. Making sure we've got the case absolutely correct. We'll align it left. We'll split the text so it can go over multiple lines. And I've got a note here of the settings that I've used. So the minimum width is 80. I'm going to have it pushed completely to the left to make as much use of the space as possible, but pull it down a bit so that we can see it within the frame. And the font size actually has to be quite small to get it to fit on. 26 seems to work quite well. I'm going to leave the text color white because we've got a black background up there. So if we save that, we need to now call up the ACT. So I'm going to press on this one here. and you can see the text beginning to appear. So if we do what we did before, we'll copy and paste that across. And then updates its position. You can see the message beginning to stretch its way across. I won't do all of them because we're going to have to come back and make adjustments to make this work. But you can see that's beginning to pan out. Okay. Because the other thing that we want to show there is the replies from air traffic control. So if I now tune back to shore and ground, you should see this string empty and this disappear. So pressing this button here to tune to shore and ground, and yes, the string's emptied and that's emptied here. So what I want to do is to be able to put a reply in the same area. So I'm back on here, and this is where this idea of the image, text definitions comes in. I've got one definition for the ATIS, and I want a new definition for what I'm going to call the agent. It's when they talk back to you there. So we'll add a new definition called agent. Obviously it's a different variable here, so it's still the L variable, and it's this one here, the ATC agent string. And again, it'll be aligned to the left, splitting the text in case it's a long message. Minimum width 80. Starting exactly on the left hand side, 20 pixels down. We can actually afford the text to be a little bit larger. So I've actually found 30 to be a good size for this one. I'm actually going to change the colour. I'm going to make this one yellow, just so we know whether we're looking at an ATIS or the agent's reply. So if we save that setting there, I now need to get the agent to say something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to request a taxi and remain in pattern. So you can see here's my request. I'm not recording the desktop sound at the moment, and you can see there's the reply. I've only got it in that one box there at the moment. If I copy and paste that across and again update the position, you'll see it beginning to form the message there. I'm going to acknowledge that clearance. Okay, so we can put two different messages into the box, but if I tune into the ATIS, you can see that both are visible at the same time. The only reason it wasn't there before is when we clear, when we tune into the ground, for instance, the ATIS string clears. But now I've got both, because this is persistent and this one clears. I've got both visible. If I tune back to ground again, the ATIS string has disappeared. It's not there, and so I can only see the persistent agent string. So this is where, to go back to here, in the text definition, this visibility variable comes into play. So we need a variable to tell us whether there is an ATIS string or not. That's what we're looking for, because that's the one that goes empty or full, or it has some text in it. That's the one that changes. So what I've done in Axis and Ohs, if I bring that over, let's move the other way. I've done a tiny bit of scripting. So if we look at the script editor here, there's one script that I've done here to check whether the ATIS is present or not, and I'll just talk you through the script. It looks at the variable, the ATIS string, and it compares it. This is string compare it with an empty string. That's just two single quotes with no space in between them. So it's asking, is this an empty string? And if it is an empty string, I've created this variable, this local variable called myATIS, and it sets it to 0. That says this is empty. If, however, it compares them and there is something in this string, it'll do the else bit, and it will set myATIS to 1. Okay, so it sets it to 0 if I haven't got the ATIS talking to me. If I have got it talking, it sets it to 1. And you can see that variable. I'm watching that variable at the bottom here. It's 0 at the moment, but if I tune in to the ATIS, you'll see that that's now gone to 1. And I'll tune out of ATIS and it's gone to 0. You need something to trigger that happening. I'm not going to put it on any of the buttons or anything like that, because I do my tuning using a rotary knob on my X-Touch. So what I'm going to do is run it as an aircraft automated script. So it sits here running all the time. So the way you allocate those are, you just look for the group, and I put it into my ACT bridge, the script, add it, and it's repeating, it's running that all the time. So it's checking whether that string is empty or not all the time. Okay, so that's that part of it. We can close that down. What I need to do here is to put that into my definition here. So I'm looking at my variable, it's my local variable, and it was called myATIS. And for the ATIS, I need to set the visibility to 1. So on the ATIS, I'm setting that visibility to 1. Save that. And for the agent, same variable, but I set that to 0. Save that. Okay, so let's tune to the ATIS again. And this one here has worked correctly. This is the only one that's got that information in at the moment. And if I tune back to ground, ATIS has gone away and that one's reappeared. So let's copy that across. And we'll adjust the position. And we'll just check that through again. So we'll choose tune into the ATIS using this button here, and that's all that's showing. And if I tune back to ground again, the last transmission from the agent is appearing. Let's try looking at ground services. Let's request a pushback. So requesting pushback, and now we're going to stop the pushback. And you can see that message is absolutely correct. Okay, so that's working quite nicely. So I've got 4 buttons left to use. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my active and standby frequencies for COM1 on here. It just saves me squinting at the screen. They're quite small, the numbers here. So if I put them there, when I go to tune in, I do the tuning on my X-Touch with the rotary controls. So let's put that in there. So we'll have it as a text gauge. And the variable I'm going to use for that is this one here, the COM active frequency. It's COM1, and I want it in megahertz, and I'm going to need 3 decimal places for that, so let's put that in there. I think I'll keep it as white, and let's see what it looks like if I just put that in. Yeah, that fills the box quite nicely. Let's put a title in there. That's active. And I'll put the standby one in here. So what I'll do is I will copy, paste standby frequency, and obviously I need to change that variable now from active to standby. So I do the my tuning in on my X-Touch, and that's happening there. But what I could, and I also do the swapping by pressing a button on my X-Touch. But what I could do is I could actually put the swap down as an event. Now it will be an HTML event. If I just copy and paste that in, because I've got that on my notes here. Because it's the Garmin 1000, we need to use that command. So it'll vary depending on which actual radio system we're using. So we'll submit that, and we'll do the same for this one here. My button settings will be HTML. And submit that. So now when I press on either of these buttons, that should swap from the active and the standby over. And both buttons are working. It's quite slow reacting. I actually prefer, I'm doing it now on my X-Touch, and that's almost instantaneous. Okay, so there we are. That's it really. I've got the ability to change the ground frequency, see the messages up here, tune into the ATIS, and tune back out again. It seems to be working quite well. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope that's been of some use to you. I've never used a multi-tile multi-gauge before, so that's my first go at doing that.